And we are ready to begin.
Good morning and welcome to today's virtual conference on Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department jails, hosted by the Civilian Oversight Commission. Today we're discussing institutional services for improved rehabilitation, including access to physical and mental health services, engagement in education-based programs, and maintaining community connections. This is the second session in a series of conferences about the Sheriff's Department jails. We will have future sessions focused on transitioning out of jail and reducing recidivism. Today, we have a great panel of speakers lined up to discuss, can people get well in a cell? You'll hear from Carrie Morrison, who is the founder and project director of Heart Forward LA, followed by Los Angeles County Department of Health Services, Correctional Health Services Director, Dr. Timothy Belovich, and from Dr. Lisa Wong, the director of the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. And lastly, we'll hear from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Assistant Director, Dr. Melissa Kelly, and a team to discuss education-based programs, meal services, visitation, and book donations. Your moderator again will be Commissioner Luis S. Garcia, who serves on the Commission's Conditions of Confinement Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you all for logging on today. And now I'll turn it over to our moderator, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Danielle, and good morning, everyone. And thank you again for joining us to learn about the institutional services for rehabilitation in the jails. My name is Luis S. Garcia, and some of you may remember me from the first conference on Sheriff's Department jails. But for those of you who I have not yet met, I am a member of the Civilian Oversight Commission, and I work for Advocates for Human Potential, a research and consulting firm where I'm a senior program manager working closely with county governments, nonprofit agencies, and private sector organizations to improve California's behavioral health system infrastructure. I also volunteer as an associate clinical social worker where I specialize in working with people with mild to moderate mental illness. I am also intimately familiar with the Los Angeles County jails because I was previously incarcerated in those facilities on several occasions, dating back to 1986. I detailed my experience finding hope and success and recovery after being incarcerated in an LA Times essay. If you read that, you'll know I'm passionate about today's conversation. I deeply value both mental health and education, especially for those in our jails and state prisons. I'll tell you a little bit about my story. Entrenching myself in education was part of my pathway that led me out of the carceral system. In 1995, just before being sent back to prison a second time, I earned my high school diploma while in county jail. I remember feeling proud that day. I was extremely fortunate to have a teacher who was able to access my records so that I could finish my credits to earn my diploma. At 27, I finally accomplished a societal rite of passage. For context, in the summer of 1989, while I was incarcerated at the now closed Mira Loma detention facility, I did attempt to take my GED, but I struggled. Years later, when I returned to the community, I restarted my education. After completing courses at my local community college, I transferred to Loyola Marymount University and graduated with a theology degree in 2001. Then sobriety granted me the stability and mental clarity to complete my master's of social work from USC in 2007. And 20 years after I left prison, I achieved my doctorate in education from Loyola in 2017. My research focus, the public value of post-secondary correctional education partnerships in the Los Angeles County Jail. I'm sharing this today because we must care about what is happening in our county jail system if we are to make our communities safer. I want us to think about the thousands of men and women incarcerated today in the Los Angeles County jail system who aren't getting the same level of care that I begged for decades ago. Indeed, I do not want us to forget the pregnant women in the jail and the specialized care they need. In the last session, I provided a little insight into my challenges with mental health and substance abuse that led me to cycling in and out of the justice system. Timely, given May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Decades ago, private insurances were not sufficient to assist in my mental health and substance abuse, and I fell through the cracks despite my family's best efforts to help me. Seeking access to mental health care in jail or prison, for that matter, wasn't and still isn't easy. Recent reports reveal that access to mental health care in the California state prison system continues to fall short. During one of my numerous county jail incarcerations, my late father, Luis A. Garcia, was the only reason I received care. He called the jail psychiatrist to ensure my psychiatric medicine was special ordered because it was not in the jail pharmacy's formulary. Most aren't so lucky to have such an advocate. Later, when I landed in my first state prison incarceration in 1991, I naively asked for mental health help at the reception center. I was offered an assessment to determine if I needed help. But after waiting nearly 6 months and with no appointment in sight, I declined the assessment. I was then transferred to another facility where I was assigned to work as a clerk. My time in that job, however, ended when I was attacked by a gang member and nearly had my ear sliced off. Prison staff wanted me to press charges. I declined for my own safety. I was then transferred to another state prison, but still received no mental health care. I cycled in and out of the carceral system for years, suffering from serious mental illness and a substance use disorder, and getting no support. It was nearly impossible to get care inside jail and prison to address the things at the heart of my convictions. There is a stigma to seeking mental health services in the carceral setting that is not talked about too much. My only saving grace was back in 1997 when I broke down in front of the forensic psychologist pleading for help during intake at the reception center, where I was sent to serve a 1-year parole violation. I began therapy with her, got medication from the prison psychiatrist, and was placed in group therapy with the prison's clinical social worker. This care team led the foundation for me to continue to feel that I could change my life trajectory for the better. Criminologists have suggested that the adaptations a person incarcerated is likely to develop in the custody environment are interpersonal distrust, social isolation, and institutional dependence. In addition, it is likely that while incarcerated, the person becomes the personification of institutionalization. Through this process of institutionalization, the individual becomes accustomed to multiple environmental deprivations, limitations that the correctional environment imposes. Institutionalized, this person is basically dehumanized. For people who have experienced the dehumanizing, traumatizing world of jails and prisons, the path toward healing and a life of recovery can feel daunting, if not terrifying. It takes tremendous courage to confront one's personal traumas. Here in Los Angeles County Jail, the jail system warehouses almost 7,000 men and women with mental health needs, participating in jail mental health programs with varying levels of care and treatment. However, the county remains woefully out of compliance more than 6 years after the county and the sheriff's department reached a settlement with the federal government to improve mental health service delivery in the jails. It's an issue that has been well documented by the federal government. Everyone who needs mental health services deserves access to quality, humane treatment, especially given the fact that the vast majority of people incarcerated will eventually return to their communities. The trauma people suffer in the custody setting follows them with them as they enter into the systems of care responsible for their care post-release. So today, we continue the conversation on jails with the focus on institutional services for improved rehabilitation, including physical and mental health services, access to education-based programs, and maintaining community connections as well. As the Commission continues to evaluate jail conditions, we welcome continued community feedback. After the speakers provide their expertise, there will be an opportunity for the community to ask questions. In addition, written public comments regarding the jails can be submitted online. Please visit our website at coc.lacounty.gov for instructions. The deadline to submit written public comment is 5 p.m. on Tuesday, May 23rd. And now, turning it over to today's speakers. Although we've told you the names and titles of the panel speakers, I invite each of you to introduce yourself, including your preferred pronouns and a little bit about your background if you wish. Without further ado, I will turn it over to our first speaker, Carrie Morrison, who is the founder and project director of Heart Forward LA. Please go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Your story is so inspiring, and I hope to maybe start this with offering a ray of hope, a place of light and kindness and compassion that I have had the privilege to witnessed very closely for the last year that I've been a volunteer in the forensic inpatient program step-down unit. And this first picture there, which is me with my precious badge from health services, that's as close as I can get when I park my phone in my car to enter Twin Towers. Moving on to the next slide, a little bit about who I am. I am not an expert in this space. I am not a clinician. I have not been involved in the criminal justice system. My background is that I managed the Business Improvement District on Hollywood Boulevard for 22 years, up until 2019. And in so doing, I became extremely aware of the challenges of homelessness and particularly untreated mental illness on the streets of Hollywood, which led me to do a deeper dive into why was it so hard to help people with severe mental illness in our community. And that led to the privilege of receiving a Stanton Fellowship in 2016 and 17, where I had a 2-year journey to try to find better ideas on how to address mental health systems change. And long story short, it led me to Trieste, Italy in 2017, which the World Health Organization has declared as a global best practice for community-based mental health care. And I was so astounded by what I saw in Trieste. I came back, I had about 4 months left in my fellowship, and they had announced an international conference in Trieste in November 2017. And I reached out to Dr. Sharon, who was the then head of DMH, and introduced myself and asked if he would be willing to work with me to bring a delegation of people back to Italy from LA County to see this system up close. So that picture on the left is Dr. Sharon, Judge Bianco from the mental health court. We had 3 people from the LA Sheriff's Department, including someone representing the jail and MEU. We had LAPD's mental evaluation unit, LASA, we had philanthropist, NAMI, and we went back and we were completely inspired by what we saw. That actually led to LA County entering into a collaborative agreement with Trieste to share information and best practices. So the middle slide is when 5 people were brought out from Trieste to tour our systems. This is them in Skid Row. They went to Twin Towers. They saw locked facilities. And let me just point out very quickly that in the Italian system in Trieste, they do not believe in locked doors in the hospital, nor do they believe in restraints. Now, obviously, they are farther along in the system than we maybe could ever hope to be, but it shows the potential for how a robust community-based system can actually avoid the trauma of hospitalization and incarceration. And the picture on the right is a second delegation of 39 people that went back in 2019 before the pandemic, again, representing the Sheriff's Department, LAPD, DMH, some philanthropists, state and local elected officials, et cetera, to be inspired. So next slide. So very quickly, what is it about that system that inspires us? And I'm going to tell you that I have actually seen most of these exhibited in the FIP step-down unit, just remarkably. Social recovery, human connection is therapeutic and can be more impactful than psychiatric interventions. And I think, Commissioner Garcia, you talked about this, the need for human advocates, for friends, for relationships, purposeful life. The Italian system believes that you have a human right to a sense of purpose, to wake up in the morning and have a sense of purpose to your day. And so building in opportunities for chores and responsibility and learning is key to their system. System accountability, you will not be left to figure out the system alone. There will be no people falling through the cracks. There is a sense of accountability between their mental health system and the people who fall within their catchment area. Nobody would be wandering without access to a case manager or to their local, the psychiatrist in their community center. Whole person care, this is so remarkable. The system is focused less on a person's diagnosis, but more on the person's life story and their aspirations in life. And then finally, radical hospitality, which I will come back to in a moment. But if we can go to the next slide. So it's a long story, and I won't go into it because I only have 10 minutes, but I did manage to encounter the FIP step-down unit a couple years ago. And as the pandemic kicked in I was in communication with these two remarkable mental health assistants who were living embedded 24/7 in ENF pod on 141, I think that's Tower 1, with the most severely mentally ill patients. And I give huge credit to, I think, Dr. Belovich and the team at the Correctional Health, along with the Sheriff's Department, back in, I believe, 2016 or 17, that started this pilot where men from Men's Central Jail who were facing long prison sentences, they were either awaiting trial or awaiting sentencing hearings, were brought into the pods to actually live embedded with the patients and to kind of help facilitate care, help to provide support. And that has evolved over the last 7 years or so into something quite remarkable, which now expands into, I believe, 6 pods with 9 or 10 mental health assistants, and a whole curriculum that they have developed to not only train themselves about mental illness and how to care for people, but also a whole curriculum that they provide to the inmates under their care. And that led to them writing a book, which I helped them self-publish during 2020 because I had nothing else to do, which I would encourage everyone to read. You can order it on BookBaby, which just kind of describes the evolution of the program and how it is that they interact with their inmates every day. There actually is a website that's been created. It's inmatementalhealthassistance.com. A medical student from UCLA helped them put this together, which has a link to the book. It has a link to a wonderful article that was in the Christian Science Monitor a couple years ago. And then also a vision. The original 2 mental health assistants were Adrian Berumen, who's left on that picture, and Cragen Armstrong. Adrian is now serving time at Calipatria in the southern part of the state. Cragen is still in the pod and is the kind of the titular leader and mentor to the other mental health assistants care. But he and Adrian created also a vision called New Life Creating Community, which actually outlines how this kind of relationship and support could be continued once inmates are released, because they have witnessed that people, when they are released after having received this kind of support, are often left disconnected and unable to kind of make it on the outside, and they will return over and over again. Next slide, please. So Radical Hospitality, after I left the Business Improvement District, I went and lived in Trieste for about a month in order to kind of understand the secret sauce of what is it about their system that is so remarkable. And it's really what I would call, it's a culture shift on how to treat people. In the Italian system, relationships are horizontal. There are no power dynamics between, clinicians and patients. There's no real understanding or emphasis on title or hierarchy. So radical hospitality is, I think, the secret sauce that permeates their whole system. There's 4 basic tenets that I believe define that in any situation where we're coming in contact with people with mental illness. And that is that we truly see you and we hear you and you are safe here and your voice matters. And what I witnessed coming into the FIP step down unit, and I'm there every week, this is naturally the default that the mental health assistants apply to their relationships with the patients under their care. It is a human dimension that they have beautifully portrayed. Final slide, please. So why is this so transformative, and why is this so exciting? And I'm so grateful that you gave me the chance to talk about this today. The benefits to the institution are this. This is an opportunity to provide redemption to violent offenders, people who may be serving 10, 15, 20, 50 years to life, to actually give back, to give them a sense of purpose. To live 24/7 is a tough, tough thing, but they are absolutely devoted to the people they serve. It actually creates an opportunity for collaboration between clinicians, deputies, and mental health assistants. And I believe that actually creates culture change, where when you walk into the FIP step down unit, there's actually a sense of peace and calm. It smells good. It's colorful. There's people laughing. It doesn't seem tense. And that's a culture change, which is really possible. It's positive and it's replicable. This program offers a sense of what's possible. It provides a ray of hope. And I'm not an expert in this, but I understand that there's been a reduction in violence and self-harm and use of force because of the kind of the relationships that have been built between the mental health assistants and the patients. Finally, to the patients, here they are able to spend time with peers who actually listen to their story, listen to their life story. I have had many of them tell me that for the first time, they understand their mental illness in a way that no one ever described it to them before, because the mental health assistants will actually teach them about hearing voices and what is bipolar and why does medication matter. They have the freedom to move, the freedom to socialize. They are not chained to furniture. They are able to come out of their cells, I think approximately 25, 26 hours a day. And when you walk in there, they're reading books, they're playing chess, they're engaging with each other, they're playing musical instruments. There's a reduction of trauma. And a lot of these inmates come in with great trauma in their backgrounds, and there's able to be a chipping away at that. Finally, there's a better chance at transitioning because you'll see the mental health assistants talking to them about what are you going to do on the outside? How are you going to stay away from meth? How are you going to try to find a way to get a job? How are you going to survive an ODR? You know, what does it mean to be in a program? And how are you going to make decisions now that are going to impact you positively in the future? All right, I could all day about this, but I just I'm glad we're starting with a ray of hope because I think this program could and should be replicated and expanded. And I give great kudos to Department of Health Services and the Sheriff's Department for keeping this going all these many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And next, we'll hear from Correctional Health Services Director, Dr. Timothy Belovich. Please go ahead, Dr. Belovich.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you, Carrie, for that presentation. The step-down units are something that we are very proud of. You're absolutely correct. They were rolled out in late 2016, early 2017, and you know, our goal is to replicate those and to not make them something that is a special unit here, but that is just the standard of treatment here. Because we think that they've been successful and they can continue to have a positive impact. Thank you also, Commissioner Garcia, for sharing your story earlier in this session. And unfortunately, that story is all too common in jails and prisons, where people don't necessarily get the level of care and the attention that they need when they need it. A little bit about myself. My name is Tim Belovich. I'm the Director of Correctional Health Services here for the Department of Health Services for Los Angeles County. I've been here with the county since 2016, early 2016, first as the Director of Mental Health for the jail, and for the last 2.5 years as the Director of Correctional Health Services. Prior to that, I spent since 2000, from 2000 to 2016, with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, where I worked as anywhere from a staff psychologist through the last 4 years I spent as the statewide director of mental health for the prison system. So my entire career has been in corrections, and you know, thankfully, I have seen positive changes over those, you know, close to 25 years. I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner Garcia, that, you know, back in the early 2000s, treatment was sparse in many institutions, and hopefully we have seen, often through litigation, we have seen forced changes that require us to bring more resources to this needed population. So if I could have the first slide, please. This is just an abstract of an article that was published recently by some of our correctional health staff. And it has to do with, it's a very small sample of 5 individuals and their A1C. And overall, what we just wanted to show with this was that there are individuals who, when they're here in the county jail, we are able to, from a medical standpoint, we are able to get some things under control. And unfortunately, when they leave the jail, their numbers become out of control. So with these individuals, we looked at their hemoglobin A1C, in their management of diabetes. And our goal was to point out that what we needed is better linkages with the community, so that when we can get something under control, and people are released, as they ultimately will be from here, that we need better linkages with the community so that continuity of care occurs, and that things that are going well continue to go well. With these individuals, unfortunately, we didn't see that. They would be released to the community, and then when they came back to the jail on charges in the future, we found that their hemoglobin A1C had gotten out of control again, and we worked again to bring it under control. So initially, obviously, we want to say that we need to link our patients with the community, so that they can continue the care when we are able to provide them the care they need, so that they don't have that roller coaster that we often see. Next slide, please. So this is data from 2020, but it mirrors closely what we would expect today as well. And the darker blue bars represent the demographics of LA County, and the lighter blue represent the demographics of the county jail system. And you can see, obviously, we wanted to highlight where we drew the arrow that 35% of those entering the county jail identify as homeless. And that is a huge challenge for us. It's a huge challenge because we don't necessarily have a place for handoffs when these individuals get released to the community. We don't necessarily have providers that these individuals are working with or seeing in the community. We see many individuals who their care occurs in the jail. And that's unfortunate. And that's not obviously what I think anybody on the panel or anybody who's tuning in to listen to this panel, wants to hear. But it's unfortunately the sad reality that the jail has become a point of care in the county. And we do provide quite a bit of care, which we'll talk about in a minute or two. But we are also obviously overrepresented in terms of male and Hispanic and Black as well. So, but again, one of the things that I think really is our challenge is the homelessness, and where these individuals will be able to go for continued care once they do release from the jail. So next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of 6 months of some of the care that has been provided here at the jail. So, and one of the things I know, Commissioner Garcia, you had mentioned substance use issues when you were incarcerated. That's been one of the focuses over the last couple of years that we've really tried to highlight. And you'll see on that second line with MAT, we have really tried to increase our medication-assisted treatment. And we're very proud of the fact that we are able to offer Sublocade, which is a long-acting injectable, to address opioid addiction. It is, we don't know of any other jails or correctional systems that are able to use that on a wide basis. So we're very proud that we've been able to work with the county and receive the funding for that. Because the reason that, quite frankly, that people aren't able to use that in correctional settings is the cost is just prohibitive. But LA County has really gotten behind us and stood behind us with our use of Sublocade, and that was something that we just kicked off this year with the funding we received. Other things that we do in the jail, obviously, prenatal care, dental care visits. In a 6-month period, there's 4,800 of those. We provide regular immunizations. When when the COVID vaccines came out, we were one of the first providers of vaccines, and the patients we serve here in the jail received them in the same way, if not more quickly than those in the community, because we are a congregate setting, and the county is well aware that that it could have spread more quickly here than in other settings. So we received a lot of support, and we were able to do a lot of vaccines here. We do regular influenza and monkeypox vaccines as well. I oversee 1,600 individuals who work in our healthcare system who provide this level of care. And these are dedicated individuals who come to work under very adverse circumstances on a daily basis. And the challenges they face are immense. So this is no small feat. In an ideal setting, it's no small feat to be able to provide this level of care. But I really do want to commend the staff that we currently have who are working so hard to provide this care. Again, like I said, we've got about 1,400 individuals who are on our staff right now, and we have about 2,000 positions overall. So we are looking to fill close to about 500 positions, which we hope to, with some new changes we're making, we hope to make that happen more quickly. I won't go through all of these, but you can see 36,000 psychiatry visits in 6 months. We provide dialysis, close to 2,000 MRIs and CAT scans and ultrasounds. The other line that I think I want to point out is the COVID-19 vulnerable patients. So individuals who are identified as having a vulnerability to or susceptibility to COVID, we have a team of nurses who check in on them once every 2 weeks. So in the 6 months, we've provided close to 6,000 of those check-ins. And so I know that the title of this session, and we'll get back to it, is, can you get well in a cell? I don't know if I'm answering that question or not, but I can say that we do provide healthcare services here, and people do receive some of the services that they need, and that they otherwise would not be receiving if they were outside the jail. Next slide, please. This slide focuses, it's also on the 6-month period, focuses on some of the mental health treatment we provide. And you can see that there were, in a 6-month period, close to 71,000 clinical contacts provided. So again, this place runs 24/7. There are, at any given day, 14,000 individuals here. As was mentioned earlier, 6,500 are enrolled in mental health services at any given time. Additionally, our intake is about 60,000 individuals per year. So that was the last number that I was provided with. So besides having a population of 14,000, there is a constant input and a constant inflow of individuals coming into our system who all need to be triaged and evaluated and have treatment plans formed and to receive urgent care and chronic care visits. So there's a huge amount of work that goes on here. And I just wanted to start off my part of the presentation by acknowledging that. And with that, I would be open to, I think we're going to hold questions till the end. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Dr. Belovich. Now you'll hear from the Department of Mental Health Director, Dr. Lisa Wong. Please take it away, Lisa.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Lisa Wong, and I am the Director of LA County Department of Mental Health. I was acting director back in July of last year and became permanent this year. And a little bit about my history. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I spent most of my career in the Skid Row area of Los Angeles working with people who are seriously mentally ill and experiencing homelessness. After being in Skid Row for, about 23 years, I went on to other regions within our county at a clinical chief level and directed different areas with all the clinical programs within those areas. So I'm happy to be here to speak with you a bit today about our partnerships and community-based programs and mental health intervention in lieu of jail. I know that, as Dr. Belovich said, I don't know if I'm exactly answering the question about can you get well in a cell, but our belief is that the best opportunity for getting well is outside of the cell. So, we really try to emphasize what we do to prevent people from going into incarceration, but also to take better care of them when they're leaving that setting. Next slide, please. So we'll just be talking very briefly about our reentry and community engagement division, and that includes our forensic mental health court programs, rapid diversion program, court liaison program, and our community engagement. That's our men's and women's community reintegration programs and our assisted outpatient treatment. Next slide, please. I'll speak first about our rapid diversion program. This is really done in partnership with ATI, Alternatives to Incarceration, and JCOD, which is the Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department, and our public defender. We conduct evaluations and linkages to services for people who are competent to stand trial and are appropriate for mental health diversion. And this means that they have a condition that is treatable by us and that we anticipate, mental health treatment will actually help them. And rapid diversion program handles both misdemeanor and felony cases. And then we have our court liaison program. This is a very recovery-based program serving people with serious mental illness and co-occurring substance use disorders. There is an on-site courthouse outreach to defendants. We have actual, staff who are on site. And then there's a development of diversion, alternative sentencing, and post-release plans that take into account the best fit treatment alternatives and court stipulations. So we really try to balance between, what we think this client needs to be better in the community and what the court is telling us they require legally. Next slide, please. Okay, next we have our community engagement programs. We have our men's and women's community reintegration programs. These are intensive outreach mental health treatment programs for people who are 18 years and older who are exiting a Los Angeles County jail and they're at risk for recidivism within 1 year of release. This is post-release mental health services, substance use disorder services, primary care treatment, and case management services for up to 2 years. And I think really what's wonderful about these two programs is we emphasize peer involvement. So there are people with lived experience who are in these programs and really help try to make that transition a bit easier and a bit more successful for people coming out of the jail. Then we have our assisted outpatient treatment program, and this was, something formerly known as Laura's Law, and it serves people who have a serious mental illness and they're at very high risk of deteriorating because of poor psychiatric treatment compliance. So these are the folks who are out there who maybe, we've tried over and over again, but they typically are not compliant with treatment and they're unlikely to survive safely in community. And I think that's a very important aspect of AOT. Eligibility may include those with 2 incarcerations within 36 months and misdemeanor incompetent to stand trial, our missed clients, otherwise known as our Senate Bill 317. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, I guess that's it. Well, so one thing I do want to mention that we didn't do a slide for is we feel that one of the best things we can do for people in these settings in terms of their well-being and mental health is to prevent them from going in the first place. And I think our program called FSP, Full Service Partnership, that really is one of the best things we can do to either prevent incarceration or reduce the incidence of incarceration for a lot of our folks. And, anybody who works in the jail setting or who has a nexus to that environment, you know that a lot of people come in and out. You have a lot of people with multiple episodes in the jails. And what our FSP, Full Service Partnership, intends to do is sort of break that cycle. They really target people who have had histories of chronic homelessness, multiple hospitalizations, multiple incarcerations. And that is a 24/7 program we have. These teams, I know sometimes it sounds like a cliche, but they really do take a whatever it takes approach to working with clients. And they really work on not just stabilizing a client and getting them out of homelessness and on medication, but they really try to help them have a life beyond, beyond their serious mental illness, beyond their symptoms, beyond their history, so that they are motivated to stay within community and they feel like they can have a place within community. But I think that is it for our programs. We're in a little bit of an unusual situation as the Department of Mental Health. We have access to folks prior to incarceration and post-incarceration, but as Dr. Belovich spoke about, all the in-custody services are mostly with his shop.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wong. Now you'll hear from Assistant Director, Dr. Melissa Kelly, who leads the education-based programs for women in the Sheriff's Department's jails.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Kelly, and I oversee not only gender responsive services, but food services as well. I've only been with the Sheriff's Department for about 5 years, but prior to that, I spent a majority of my life in academics. I am an environmental epidemiologist in training. We were actually asked to bring multiple subject matter experts and to talk on a variety of topics. So I'm actually going to pass over the presentation initially to the custody team and Chief Velasquez, and then they'll turn it over to me to speak on my roles.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Guman. I'm a sergeant. I work here in custody administration. We're just going to touch on inmate visitation. Just a broad overview of some of the time frames that we offer visitation and some of the facilities that offer it. Men's Central Jail visitation we have on Thursday through Sunday from 7 to 3 p.m. and that includes holidays. Twin Towers Correctional Facility, we have visitation that occurs from Saturday to Tuesday, 7:30 to 5 p.m., which includes holidays as well. The women's facility down at Century Regional Detention Facility, visitation occurs Monday and Friday from 9 to 12:30, and then Saturday and Sunday from 7:30 to 5:30. So various hours to accommodate different needs. Visitation has to be scheduled in advance. We have a portal that's on our website, visit.lasd.org. We also have kiosks that are available at the jail facilities for public account creation. Accounts have to be created in order to schedule visits. We also have an app for our phones that actually help assist folks in setting up for visitation at the various facilities that we have at LA County. Next slide, please. The next topic I want to go over is for mail. We receive mail at the Inmate Reception Center, which is our hub. The mail is delivered to us from the United States Postal Services. We process over 100,000 pieces of mail every year at the Inmate Reception Center. Once the mail is processed, it's screened and is delivered to the jail facilities for distribution to the folks that are supposed to receive the mail. Mail is delivered Monday through Friday during the morning hours. Next slide. Now I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Hellman, who will go over some of the innovative programming that we offer, and in this case, the book donations.
Thank you so much, Sergeant. I'm Dr. Yael Hellman. A little bit about me. I have been involved in programming for mental health facilities for many, many years. And then I became a professor at a local university And I've now been at the Sheriff's Department for over 8 years in the capacity of the Educational Development Administrator. And I'm thrilled to say that our book program has been undergoing a huge expansion, and we are collaborating with the Los Angeles County Library. And we have information now on our website, www.lasd.org, for the public to donate books. And we have made this pretty easy, I think. All the local Los Angeles County libraries are accepting books for the jail donations. And the Friends of the Libraries go through the books to make sure they're in good condition. And then we work with the library system to pick up the books and make sure that they get on the shelves for the inmates. To this end, we have put in new shelving for all the modules in the Twin Towers facility. We have new shelving at Men's Central Jail, and all the facilities up north also have shelving with full books, a full array of books on the shelves. I am working with our inmates to make sure that they know how to stack the books and go through the books and sort the books so that they are grouped according to fiction, nonfiction, and other subject matters. And I'm really excited about this program and our collaboration with the county library. Next.
And I'll speak specifically about services for women in our system. And so currently, women are actually the fastest growing segment of the incarcerated population. They've increased over 500% in the last few decades. And that rate was actually much more substantial before COVID. It was over 700%. But due to a lot of institutional changes that have happened over the last couple of years with the pandemic, the numbers have gone down, but it still is a striking example of a population that has exploded and a system that was primarily built around men and men's needs. My position and my unit was created in 2019 when there was a series of board motions that came out to really address changes that were needed in our system and to really look at initiating and expanding efforts to address justice-involved women's needs. And then there were multiple board motions that have come out subsequently to expand my scope of focus as well as the populations that we are addressing in my unit as it's developed and it grows out. And ultimately, the goal of gender responsive services is to build a gender responsive as well as a trauma informed system that is promoting safety and well-being and really focusing on being adaptive and responsive to those that are not only living, but also working in the system as well. Next slide. And a big part of my unit, and there's multiple units and bureaus that do provide services because we have a lot of complex situational needs that have developed in the jails. There's a lot of challenges that are similar to prisons, but also very unique. We have aging infrastructure, we have overcrowding, and we've had a growing number of very specialized populations that have higher acuity. But jails are also very unique in that we have incredibly dynamic turnover. We can have people that are here for a few hours to over a decade. This creates a very heterogeneous population that is very difficult to really address the needs. And going back to the theme of this conference of can you really get well in a cell, it makes it very difficult because it is an ever-changing population and a target that's constantly moving. You know, people have different types of lengths of stay, they have different statuses, and frankly, there's just a lack of rehabilitative and institutionalized space because county jails were never meant to house people for long periods of time. So it makes it very difficult, but we do our best to try and adapt as those populations change. And so for the women at CRDF, we provide an array of rehabilitative services and programs. Some of the services are provided directly by my staff. Some people or some programs are also offered by outside providers. They may be other county entities, they may be community members. We're always looking to have new partners to try and provide new opportunities as our populations change. We provide not only programs and services, but we also try to provide as many therapeutic activities and events as well that are tailored specific to population needs. And we provide traditional academic programs, as we've heard, the speaker earlier talk about getting his high school diploma. So we have high school diploma. You can take college classes. We also provide an array of life skills classes, different types of vocational training, and just some other fun therapeutic activities. And then we also are working on various initiatives. So one of the things that's unique to my unit is we provide programs and services, but trying to have a little bit more of a holistic perspective and looking at the pathways to incarceration, the linkages that we can use between different types of service entities, trying to create changes to the environment, to the culture, and ultimately hoping to have more system responsivity. So besides just providing services and programs, we're also initiating changes to our recreation space, our visiting space, trying to improve our classrooms, and then overall looking at how we can improve our data collection and really using data-driven solutions that are not only what we can find out about the services that we provide, but also looking towards gold standards in the United States and internationally about how we can improve rehabilitation for this population. I think that's our last slide.
I'd like to thank all the speakers here for providing important insight and perspectives regarding institutional services for improved rehabilitation inside the jails. This is a complex government and societal issue that needs our discussion, collaboration, and action to ensure that the Sheriff's Department is providing appropriate services to assist in rehabilitating people in custody. Before we jump into questions from the public, I'd like to ask the panelists a few questions. My first question, and I'll start off with just a recent experience. This past Friday evening, I was able to go along with two civil brand commissioners on a jail inspection, and we went to HOH housing unit, and I was able to interact and talk with some of the men that were, in their cells. And one of the things that I left with after that visit was historically, we know that, whether it's jail or prison, the role of rehabilitation in these environments has always been shaped by this systemic conflict between security, punishment, and rehabilitation. I left there feeling like, these deputies that were in this housing unit didn't go to the academy to be working in this type of environment. I mean, I felt for them because these individuals were, behind the cell, basically existing. And, we were able to, I give credit, the sergeant was sharing with us the routine that they do to make sure that the cells are cleaned. But then there's also a lot of, resistance for many various reasons. And it just led me to think about the role of correctional health services in this collaboration. This facility was considered an outpatient step, from I believe from the FIP and forensic inpatient program. So it just struck me that that with a need like for a collaboration to have more of a at least what it looked to me, more of a clinical presence. So I'll start off with this, my question with my question for Dr. Belovich. How is engagement tracked with clinicians in these units, these outpatient HOH units? Are they seen weekly or biweekly or monthly?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Yes, so on the unit you're describing, which referred to as HOH or high observation housing, that those units house some of our highest acuity patients. The general treatment program for those individuals would be to be followed weekly by their clinicians, and to also receive group treatment up to 10 hours a week. In addition to that, there are also daily huddles that occur on the units, so that you had mentioned the collaboration, especially between custody and healthcare staff. There are daily huddles that occur in the units so that custody and healthcare staff can share important information, such as whether or not someone is coming out of their cell, so whether or not someone is participating in treatment, whether or not someone has gotten more sick while they were there, or whether people are improving. So those daily huddles do occur, obviously on a daily basis, and that's our most efficient way, and probably our most important way of communicating with custody, in terms of collaborating on each of the units. The other clinical contacts that occur is regular psychiatry visits. So psychiatry visits will occur at least every 90 days for all of our patients, but for our higher acuity patients on a more frequent basis, as directed by the psychiatry staff. And then, that is just our mental health component. All these individuals also obviously receive, nursing and, primary care as needed as well.
Thank you. And one other,
I do want to say, let me qualify that as well. There are often challenges to that in terms of our staffing. I know that I had mentioned it earlier. There are 500 vacancies that we are looking to fill. So it is essential that we start to bring on more individuals who would be willing to work in this environment. One of the ways we're doing that is trying to offer significant, what we call jail-based bonuses for individuals who will come and work here, because we don't have a lot to offer that other facilities or other medical centers may have to offer our staff. And so we try to incentivize that any way we can. So we really do have to also focus on getting the needed staff on board to provide those services.
thank you. One other question that came to mind as well after that visit, I was able to observe the custody deputy going down the tier and scanning the scale, the 15-minute check. And so I was talking to the sergeant about that, and he was sharing that, they go through, they check it, it's tracked. And if something were to happen, they have the cameras in the unit. With those, you mentioned the clinician visits and the psychiatry visits. Are those publicly, like, is there a report, very much like the transparency reports that are on the Sheriff's Department side, on CHS side, is there a report that that the public can see with regards to like Q1, Q2 inmates in these units have been, touched or seen by clinicians and the doctor?
Yeah, we don't have that data. That would be great data to have. The data I shared with you, for example, that does come from our electronic medical record, and we compile that. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to pull that, so that took staff a significant amount of time. So I'm unable to pull that level of data on a regular basis. It'd be nice to have that at our fingertips and know how many of X happened on any given day or time period, but there's no easy or fast way to do that. Part of it is just because of the nature of the systems we're using. Some of the systems we use are quite old, and I think, as Dr. Kelly said, jails were not built to provide healthcare. And so we have to sort of back into providing that. And so the tracking of that also goes along with that. Jails weren't built to track all of these contacts in these instances. So we can come up with data, but it is not an easy way to come up with, there's no easy way for us to come up with that.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
My next question is for Dr. Kelly. I was reviewing the Sheriff's Department's conditions of confinement Q1 report, and I highlight the data that was reflecting the number of pregnant women that have had births inside the jail, and then there was some data points where the unfortunate there was a miscarriage or termination of pregnancy. What type of prenatal support or trauma support are delivered towards these pregnant women or women with histories of abuse and trauma?
So women as well, and our pregnant women are as well. I guess we'll start with the pregnant women, are offered a full complement of the routine health care that any woman would have access to. In regards to trauma support, that's something that our system does not provide as many services as it should be. We have some classes that interweave the idea of what is trauma, how do you move beyond trauma, but unfortunately, it's something that has not been integrated to the level that we would like. With my unit in particular, while it was created in 2009, it is actually, I'm the only funded position. I'm not currently staffed with anyone that is full-time and funded to me. I have all of my staff are on loan, and we also have a very tiny budget. So right now I'm leveraging grant funds to actually get trauma training for my staff, because that unfortunately is something that is not routinely provided. We also, before COVID, had a provider that was providing prenatal classes, trauma classes, but due to the complexities of COVID, they were not allowed to come in for a while. They lost funding, and it's been a very difficult situation since COVID to get providers back into the facilities to be able to provide classes. So it's something that is a gap in our service, but it's something that the department recognizes as a need, and we're trying to leverage as many resources as we can to provide that support. I can tell you though, working with the facilities, that anyone that is identified as pregnant, my staff go to them, try and get them enrolled in educational classes, parenting classes, anything that they may need while they're there. But ODR and DHS and all the other stakeholders in the system do try their best to get any woman that is pregnant out. Our goal is to not have women that are incarcerated having their babies there. We know that it is not gender responsive or trauma informed, but unfortunately, due to charge levels or mitigating circumstances, not every woman is eligible for diversion. But it is the #1 priority of the Sheriff's Department and all the stakeholders that are involved in a woman's care when she's pregnant to get her out of the jail as soon as possible.
Thank you. And my next question is for Dr. Hellman. Well, nice to see you again, Dr. Hellman. I believe we met, well, we did actually, I think we met in 2019 when I was inside the jail for a performance by the musicians from the organization Street Symphony.
Yes,
And
yes.
well participated, and I remember getting positive feedback from the men and from custody staff. 10 years ago or so, I spoke at one of the early first graduations for EBI after the revamp, post AB 109 realignment. And I remembered it was in Twin Towers, and it was I think it was two individuals that had graduated with their high school diploma. I know since then, and then we had the pandemic, and everything kind of got turned upside down. Has there been any recent graduations, high school
Yes,
in the system?
yes. We just had one because of COVID. We grouped everyone that got their diplomas during COVID for graduation up north at the facility NCCF, and I believe there were over 16 graduates with their high school diplomas. Again, because people leave quite frequently, there's a high turnover. We tried to catch those that we could that were still in custody. During the pandemic, we had a virtual graduation at Men's Central Jail, where we had about 15 graduates with our New Opportunities Charter School. So we have continually been providing high school education throughout this time. We are now back in person and expanding our program with the men's facilities. We probably have over 500 people in the men's facilities taking high school classes towards their diplomas. And as Dr. Kelly said, we also have academic college classes. We have life skills classes as well. And then we have some therapeutic activities such as, I don't know if any of you saw, Mental Health Monday. We had the Jail Guitar Doors, which do a robust program, a 10-week curriculum. It's very much like music therapy, and we hoping to expand that program. So we have a wide variety of programs with really the focus first on that high school diploma, which will help with employability.
And with regards to the book donations, in that jail visit on Friday, in the unit, it was impressive to see a book, case full of books. So, books are, they were available, and I see this, as it's an innovative programming that can help people at all levels across, the system, the jail system.
Along that line, as we were getting one of our libraries in Men's Central Jail together, we weren't even done putting up the books, and some of our incarcerated people were already coming up. Can I take a book? May I have a book? So it's really something that's great to help structure the time. As we know, structured time in the jails helps prevent violence and force and other things that we don't want to see happening.
Yes, thank you. And my next question is for Carrie. And I want to just preface it with, in the Title 15 minimum standards, the definition for trauma reads as, it's an experience that causes intense physical and psychological stress reactions. It can refer to a single event, multiple events, or a set of circumstances that are experienced by an individual as physically and emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's physical, social, emotional, cognitive, or spiritual well-being. So in hearing about your work and this radical hospitality and the work within the FIP, I've noted, your benefits to the institution and the culture change, which, positively impacting deputies and inmates and the staff as well. And the hope for this model to scale up in other parts of the facilities. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, somebody said a few moments ago that the LA Sheriff's Department never signed up to run the largest mental institution in the country, right? That's on us as the public. We've allowed that to happen. And so the sheriffs are the last man standing, and there's a bed at Twin Towers for people who our system has failed. That was kind of what led me into this work. See people I saw on Hollywood Boulevard end up at Twin Towers. And in fact, my first month volunteering last year, there was a guy in there who looked so familiar to me. And what I would do is go in on Thursday afternoons and just sit and talk with the inmates and just say, tell me your story. I wanted to see where their life went off the rails, and where, had there been intervention earlier as a teenager, as a young adult, they may not have ended up incarcerated. And this particular guy I sat with, I said, oh my gosh, I remember you. I remember you from Hollywood Boulevard. And we started talking about, he came in on a Greyhound. all the places he would eat. And here he was at Twin Towers 10 years later and heading to prison. So yes, the trauma, generally when, and I'm not a clinician, so I'm just a person, and you'll hear stories about things that, and people in the FIP step down unit come from high income families and come from families who are impoverished. And so the radical hospitality model is one of just basically coming alongside a person and building that sense of community and trust. So Dr. Belovich mentioned the severe shortage of clinicians and mental health workers. We know that that's a national problem. What strikes me as so remarkable, and I would encourage the entire Civilian Oversight Committee to come in and spend a couple hours observing this and talking not only with the patients, but the mental health assistants. There is this kind of opportunity to enhance the workforce through peers. What I have heard from the mental health assistants is that in the early days, clinicians would walk right past them, and this is like talking about 5-6 years ago, and talk to the patient. They come in for the fairly regular visits, but eventually they would ask the mental health assistant, like, how is this guy doing? The guy is screaming at night. The mental health assistant can explain what's happening. He's there 24/7. They never leave. They can talk about how the medication is working or not working. They can talk about what more this person needs because they are there. And so what this evolution of the cultural change of collaborating, talking with each other, looking out for these inmates. What I noticed from the deputies also, because I have visited other floors, not as much, but the deputies, they're there to keep a safe environment, but with the mental health assistants in those pods, they don't have to intervene. They don't have to extract people from their cell. They don't have to even, they're doing their 15-minute checks, but for the most part, it's a very, very safe and kind environment. I have no other way to describe it. So I think the radical hospitality has been something that has permeated and kind of calmed things down all the way around.
Thank you very much. Thank you to each of our panelists for sharing your thoughts. And to the community, sorry. I'd like to thank all of our speakers here for providing important insight and perspectives regarding institutional services for improved rehabilitation inside the jails. This is a complex government and societal issue. And now I would like to open this up to the live Q&A portion. Jennifer, are there any community questions for the panel?
Yes, we do have a number of people who have already raised your hands. If you're logged into the WebEx, you'll see on your screen, if you're an attendee, how to raise your hand. This will put you in queue to be able to ask questions. If you have called in, please press *3 to get in queue and be unmuted. And then I will unmute you when it's time for your turn so that you can ask your question. If your question is for a specific panelist, please feel free to state that. And to ask a question, you must be logged into the WebEx or phoned into the meeting. If you are commenting on the Facebook Live video, your question may be read by the host. And before we begin, we will have a quick announcement in Spanish. So Eric, please go ahead.
Sí, buen día. Si está participando en esta conferencia por WebEx y quiere hacer una pregunta, por favor presione la imagen de la mano y alguien le ayudará cuando sea su turno. También si está escuchando la conferencia por teléfono y quiere hacer una pregunta, por favor presione la estrella y 3 y igualmente alguien le ayudará. Gracias.
Great, thank you very much, Eric. And we will begin with Bernita Walker. You've been sent a request to unmute. And just as a reminder for the attendees, this is not a public comment portion, this is questions. So if you have comments, please be sure to ask your question as you conclude. And Bernita, I see that you're unmuted now. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing. I am a retired deputy sheriff, but I also am a grandmother of one of the mental health persons that has been going in and out of the jail facility, and presently I believe is in the diversion program. I can't get that information, but I do want to know. But I do want to congratulate you on the work. Also, my question is there going to be any type, or is there any type of counseling or work with the families? You mentioned the fact that when they get out of the jail system, there's a down in what they're doing because of the fact that, well, in my mind, because the family is not trained to work with them to continue this service that you have implemented in their lives. So is there anything going on or thinking about putting in place so that the families can be trained? Because these individuals, many of them are coming out of being the trauma that they received as a child, from being mistreated, and those they put domestic violence. I am an intimate partner violence survivor, as well as a violence prevention practitioner. So that's why I'm asking these particular questions. Thank you. I have other questions, but I know I can only answer one at this time. Ask one.
Sure, I'll start. Thanks for your question, Ms. Walker. Yeah, unfortunately, well, our staff do at times work closely with families when they can, and they reach out to families, or they respond to families who reach out to us, which often happens. Unfortunately, though, I know some systems are able to, while the individual is still incarcerated, begin that transition or counseling process with the family or family members to transition individuals out to the community. We don't do that here in LA County, and at this time we don't have the resources or the bandwidth to do that level of counseling. What we would hope is that, you know, when we are able to connect individuals with the community resources, that it can at least start to happen there. So unfortunately, right now it does not happen here in the jail setting, but we would encourage that to happen, as part of the release process, and the reintegration into the community. And I don't know if maybe anyone from DMH might have more exact information about some of their programs.
What can the community do to assist? What can the communities do to assist? There's a number of community programs that are out there that are addressing addressing the mental health issues. So what can we do to collaborate with you so that we can assist our people, our communities, in getting this particular help that we need? Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm Connie Draxler. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Wong, who had to leave for another event. And I want to address a couple of things. First of all, I think that as we are involved with community reintegration programs, we do seek to make contact with families, certainly with the consent of our client, to ensure that we can provide services to the entire unit and to ensure that there is greater success as individuals are re-entering into the community. I would like to highlight another outside organization that may be really appropriate for family members, and that is NAMI and their family-to-family training session, which will give individuals great education around mental health disorders, how to work with your loved ones who are experiencing serious mental illness. So encourage that also as a nonprofit outside organization that may assist families, and I know that they are very involved too in working with Justice Involved. So there's quite a few programs there that I would encourage everyone to be involved with NAMI.
Great. Thank you very much for those answers. The next question will come from Dr. Brittany Dennis. A request has been sent for you to unmute. Dr. Brittany Dennis. Okay, it looks like you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
My question is, I am currently a supervisor for the Women's Community Reintegration Program, and my staff is frequently in and out of CRDF to provide services to the ladies who are referred to us in custody. One of the frequent complaints that we get from the clients who are referred to us And also, even by way of the sheriff custody staff, is that the ladies are not seen quite frequently for mental health services. And when they do ask for services, there is an extended period of time that they are seen. So I'm interested in knowing what is correctional health services. What is something that you guys are working on to increase the frequency of services and access to care to the ladies in custody? And I'd like to mention that I hear there is a staffing issue over at DHS, but these have also been complaints pre-COVID that have existed. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for your question. Again, I think that a lot of what we're talking about is coming down to the staffing issue and the vacancies we have. We had vacancies pre-COVID as well. When we have this number of vacancies, individuals who are supposed to be seen every week may end up getting seen every other week. Individuals who put in requests to be seen, which our goal is to see them within several days, may take 7 to 10 days. So everything, when we are impacted by staffing, everything takes longer, and that's just where we are as we sit here today as well. Again, we continue to ramp up our hiring efforts. We've made some significant changes. Part of the reason we have vacancies is that a lot of new positions have been allocated to us. We didn't have many of these positions in the previous several years, and so working within the county, those positions that have been allocated, now we need to fill them, and that next challenge comes down to the national shortage we have, especially with healthcare providers, and particularly with mental health care providers. Everyone is competing for the same pool of individuals and the same pool of talent. So one of the things that we have recently been able to do is to increase salaries here at the jail so that we can both attract and retain the staff who are working here.
Thank you very much for that answer. And we'll move on to the next question. Will come from Mayor Constantine Anthony. A request has been sent for you to unmute. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Hi, yes, this is Mayor Anthony from the city of Burbank. There was a proposal in April under federal mandate to quote unquote depopulate the LA County jails. Obviously it was pulled. I am actively campaigning to be a supervisor in District 5 and hopefully can get this motion moved forward. And so I guess my question is, under the federal mandate, with the push from the supervisors to depopulate, how are we addressing very real aspects of our jailed population going back into society? And personally, from my own standpoint, you know, with our criminal justice system, the way it's so flawed, any individual who is locked up, anybody, even if they're serving a life sentence, could turn around and through DNA evidence be exonerated and get back out on the street. So are we treating folks as though they are going to enter society again? Or is there a certain aspect where we are simply accepting that there's a number of folks who will be spending the rest of their lives in prison? Because if there's any aspect to that, if we start treating people, some as going out and some as staying in, you're going to get a tiered approach. Because I really like what you were talking about. I really love what they're doing in Italy, where they're treating everyone as an individual. And from my standpoint, if we treat every single person as though they are going to step out of those walls tomorrow, the next day, even if they're serving a huge sentence, I think that is a great first step. So I guess my question is, what are we doing actively now to anticipate this mass exodus of folks coming from the jails?
I'd like to respond to a portion of that, if that's okay. Mayor Anthony, you know, I've been sitting and talking with inmates who some are going to be restored to competency by going to the state hospital. Some are awaiting trials or settlements, etc. And I am not a clinician, okay? So I mean, I just keep saying that, but I have observed that there are some people who I have spent time with in the step-down unit who are very, very sick, very impaired. And when I hear about their options of leaving and going into a board and care or going into perhaps ODR, I believe some will make it, but I also do believe that we really need to think about piloting a different type of housing, post-release housing that has a high degree of structure, a high degree of support, something apart from just a traditional board and care. And we're losing board and care homes, as you know, throughout the state at a fast clip. And these are folks who, in my opinion, would not be able to make it in permanent supportive housing because they would not be able to buy their own groceries and cook their own food. So I would love it if we could brainstorm around a pilot of some to release people into a highly structured, what I would call congregate living community with a sense of purpose attached, you know, gardening, cooking, chores, etc., to model a different post-release residential option that, in my opinion, does not exist.
Thank you. And do any other panelists have additional comments on that? Okay, we will move on to next is Cesar Arredondo. A request has been sent for you to unmute, Cesar. Cesar Arredondo, a request has been sent for you to unmute. If you can acknowledge that request on your screen. Doesn't look like there's any action on your end. So Jean Harris, a request has been sent for you to unmute. Jean Harris. Okay, you're unmuted. Please go ahead, Jean.
My first question is the current vague definitions of level of disability in legislation have resulted in inconsistent use of psychiatric assessment holds. Often, I have seen the most mentally ill individuals not being involuntarily treated until they're arrested for dangerous behavior, but not being provided with AOT or FSP, and not enough accountability in these programs under the excuse of HIPAA. So how can we have better oversight to allow diversion programs to reduce the incarceration of our severe mentally ill community members? And a second topic is release of mentally ill persons that have been transported to county jail and then are released to the streets without basic needs like shoes or a phone or any ability to communicate, becoming unhoused and untreated on the streets of Los Angeles. I represent the Antelope Valley. I work with NAMI. I provide family programs and support groups to individuals with mental illness, but I've heard too many horror stories about women being transported from the Antelope Valley down to the women's jail and then released in the middle of the night, sometimes with no shoes, no phone, no ability to contact their loved ones. And they're so ill that they end up on a sidewalk. I have many families that have gone down to LA from the Antelope Valley repeatedly searching for their loved one who is now lost after being held in a jail setting. I don't know what the answer is except to stop doing that.
Thank you, Jean, for your comment. If you could just wrap that up with your question, just go ahead and restate your question for the panelist.
How can we have better oversight to these diversion programs and not release people to the streets that are severely mentally ill?
Thank you for that. Thank you very much, Jean. And panelists, for whoever would like to take that, please go ahead.
I can only speak to the release part, Jean. and I would defer to DMH to talk about the AOT issues and the diversion issues. But so when individuals are part of mental health and released from the jail, they do receive a brief evaluation to ensure that they are safe to be released and that they don't need a hold. But we quite frequently do complete 5150 holds on people who are being released from the jail, and then we transport them to psychiatric urgent care as well. So if they are unable to be safely released, we do take steps to make sure that that part does not happen. And with that, Connie, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know AOT is your world more than mine.
Thanks, Tim. No problem. Yeah, so from the Department of Mental Health perspective, we can speak around the diversion programs that we utilize, which is limited, recognizing that, the Office of Diversion and Reentry does the majority of the diversion programs for the county. So for the Department of Mental Health, one primary area that you're going to see that we will be working on in terms of diversion would be an individual actually who's not going to be appropriate or accept diversion being referred for our assisted outpatient treatment program. And if an individual is going to come into AOT two different ways, they could voluntarily engage in participating in treatment, or there could also be the possibility of the department filing a petition with the court for court-ordered treatment. Obviously, that's going to give you a little bit more. There is that accountability there in terms of ongoing court hearings and appearances to ensure that an individual is adhering to the court orders. I think the other thing that I would point out is that we will see probably around December 1st, the implementation of Care Court, which will be available also to individuals who are being released from the jails. And again, similar to AOT in that it will have an ability to have voluntary participation, but in the event that that is not going to work out, there would be the ability to petition for court-ordered treatment as part of the Care Court process. So I think accountability in those two areas related to those legal processes where there is court supervision. I would also say that as part of our FSP programs, which are funded through the Mental Health Services Act funding, there is ongoing and repeated outcome data measures that we are responsible for providing to the state, to the accountability. There is an Oversight and Accountability Commission for MHSA dollars, and so that is another area where the department is held accountable through that process with MHSA funding.
Great, thank you for that answer. Next.
I'm sorry, could we just also, there was an issue mentioned about the release of individuals in the middle of the night. Dr. Kelly, or can one of our custody colleagues clarify our release process?
Yeah, that has changed. We no longer release individuals during the middle of the night. That was something that was a practice years ago, but that has completely changed. And we realized that a majority of the services are available in the daytime, and that we wanted to have greater alignment and congruence with those service providers to make sure there's a warm handoff. So that is something that has been discontinued for several years now.
Very good. Thank you very much for that clarification. Next, we will hear from Cesar Arredondo. Please go ahead with your question, Cesar.
Thank you. I had several questions, but I just focus on one, and this is, what can the relatives or loved ones of jail inmates do to ensure that prisoners get as much help as possible in light of all the challenges, including the limited availability of mental health services? Does it help to establish any key contact with jail staff to ensure that their loved ones get the help they need?
Great question. Thanks, Mr. Arredondo. Yes, actually, we work quite frequently with family members. We are able to always receive information from family members. We aren't always able, if we don't have a release of information, we aren't always able to make that a two-way street and share information, but we can always take in information, and we often do. I know I saw Mark Gale here on the as one of our attendees, and Mr. Gale for years has worked very closely with us in connecting us with family members, as well as through sometimes board offices were reached out to. But if you have a concern about your loved one, you can reach out through the Medical Command Center, and I'll pull up the number here. The Medical Command Center, and you can always share information about your loved one, and that will make it to the clinical staff, and the clinical staff can always then can reach back out to you. The Medical Command Center is staffed 24/7 here at the jail, and the number is area code 213-893-5544. And we can always, like I said, take in information and at least communicate to you that we've received information. We may not always be able to share details with you again unless we can get a release from our patient, but we always do appreciate information coming in from family members.
Great, thank you for that. And next we have HP Lay. You're unmuted.
Yes, good morning, everyone. HP Lee. I represent the Verizon Frontline suite of products and solutions for public safety and health. I was curious for this group here, if anyone is considering leveraging additional technologies. I've heard a lot of conversation around, how do we help folks transition back into the community? So technology for training as people are going through their process in the jails, technology for the DMH folks for telehealth, providing distance learning, virtual check-ins for parolees as they get released. Obviously other transition services. Another individual mentioned communications, job assistance, housing, employment, etc. So I think the probation departments, DMH, LASD, and the folks who are responsible for homelessness, right, the opioid crisis, other at-risk populations, how do we help them transition? And is technology one of the possible solutions out there with the affordable connectivity program that's out there for, reduced funding for digital inclusion and equity for connectivity? My thoughts are, is anybody within the LA County, technical side of the house, LASD, DMH, or other entities looking at leveraging the platforms, the software, the hardware, the different form factors that you can reach out to the different populations to be able to help them transition, to help them get training so that when they do transition, they become successful. I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
I can speak to some of the technological solutions that we've recently implemented. It's a great question, and it really is a dynamic solution to a lot of the situations with connecting individuals that are incarcerated with services while they're in the jail, as well as they transition out. Unfortunately, we do have very aged infrastructure where we have not been able to implement tablets yet, but we're working towards that as a solution. But just during COVID, we couldn't bring any providers in because of the dynamics of the pandemic, but it also forced the department to be able to bring in wireless services and be able to do classes remotely. And it was a huge first step for the department because we never had that opportunity. And we were able to bring college classes in, at least into the women's facility, that had never existed before. We brought in a career center during COVID and were able to do it virtually until we were able to transition. And we've been able to bring in training and other types of resources that have never existed before utilizing technology. But I think the system has a large way to grow towards using it. A big part of it, like I said, is aging infrastructure, but the department and the county are trying to invest to make sure that we have more of those digital services and less of a digital divide. It's just it's a very large system, and there's a lot of players, and it's incredibly expensive. And there needs to be funding that's allocated and resourced to moving those technological solutions. But the department is interested and has leveraged some of the technology in recent years to provide better services.
Thank you for that, Dr. Kelly. And the next question will come from Julia Silver. Go ahead, Julia.
Hello, I'm the mother of a son that was incarcerated at Twin Towers in 2017 through 2018. He has severe mental illness. He's now in the state hospital system. My question is, what kind of training do sheriffs get in terms of dealing with severely mentally ill inmates? One of you mentioned that they may come out of the academy, maybe not anticipating that they're going to be working with this population. So I just want to know, what training they get. And I have one other question. I think Dr. Belovich mentioned that in response to a question about what family can do, I did have contact, very good contact with clinicians when my son was there. However, on the weekends, there was no coverage. So has that changed? Is there clinician coverage on the weekends now?
I can address the clinician coverage and allow someone else to talk about the custody training. Thanks, Ms. Silver. Yeah, we do have 24/7 coverage. We don't have the intensity of coverage on weekends that we have during the weeks. We expect that to be changing when we were able to hire the staff. Just because mental health doesn't take a break on weekends. We know that. We want to be a 24/7, 7-day-a-week program, including holidays as well. So again, that's where we're wanting to get. And with additional staff, we will get there. But we're not there right now. I do think there are more people working on weekends than your experience several years ago, Ms. Silver. But we're not there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And I can defer to custody to maybe talk about their CIT training.
Good morning, this is Chief Margarita Velasquez. We do offer some basic training in de-escalation and mental health. However, it would be beneficial to get additional training if we had the resources and the manpower, but we would welcome any training that's available.
Great, thank you. And next we have a call-in user. You are unmuted. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello, my name is Riley. I'm with Riley Arts Foundation in Los Angeles. I take the metro at Union Station on a regular basis, and I see men released from the jail with their plastic bags. Some of them have no shoes. Some of them have open wounds with blood showing. And I'm really concerned that what I've heard this morning from all the experienced experts on this panel, you know what's going on, but we don't see changes. And I'm speaking about pre-pandemic as well as today. So I don't understand why it is that there's so many people with years of experience allow this to continue even today. And my question is, how can it be corrected? How will you use your experience to make changes? Thank you.
A great question. I'm not sure if anyone wants to chime in on systematic changes or any upcoming changes with the department. Okay, well, it looks like we'll jot down that question and hopefully come back to it later, unless last call, anyone want to chime in on that?
Hi, this is Margarita Velasquez. I just want to clarify that all of the incarcerated, when upon release, are given some type of shoe. So I'm not sure, the caller stated that they didn't have any shoes at all, but usually they are given shoes when they walk out. So we'll double check on that, but I'm almost certain that all of them have the shoes. We have donated clothing as well.
I will also chime in that I think what the caller brings up is one of the things that I noted, the challenges that we have in our system to keep people connected to resources that will help them, to a case manager, social worker, what have you. One of the things that we're excited to be working with the Department of Mental Health on right now, and it had been delayed because of the pandemic, but it is a state-funded pilot earmarked for Hollywood to look at the community-based system of care and building out more psychosocial connections. And so one of the things we've envisioned in the ecosystem that we're preparing for Hollywood is that if you were released from jail, you would be connected to somebody in the Hollywood community, whether it's FSP, whether if it's social worker, it could be someone with a local church who has a relationship with that person, so that that person is not left to their own devices upon being released from jail. So we know that it can be porous in our current system. And the state has funded a 5-year pilot in Hollywood, and that will be one of the models that we hope to demonstrate. It would reduce homelessness, would reduce recidivism, and help people on their recovery path.
And I'll also chime in, just something that hasn't been mentioned is just the sheer volume of people that come in and out of our system. We have over 100,000 individuals that come in just to the jail system, not even individuals that have contact with some type of law enforcement. And there's just not that many community beds. And while the county has created JCOD and they've done all these very innovative projects, it's not enough community resources. And you have to realize too, the community is also competing for the same beds of people that are coming out of the justice system. And it's truly a volume issue, and not having enough trained staff members, not having enough beds, and having a really complex humanitarian crisis. I mean, if you look at every time it rains, they tell you not to go to the beaches because the water's contaminated, because water, like literally our flooding systems can't contain that. And that's actually where we're at. It feels like there's a dam break with the number of people that have come into the system and just not having the right type of care. And we're really in a reactionary state. And that's not something that is it's a flattering statement to make. It's not something that I want to have to work in every single time, and that we want people to be able to provide that level of care, but we're so under-resourced. And it's a community level problem, and there's a lot of resources that are being placed towards improving the system. But unfortunately, it takes time to build infrastructure. It takes time to build expertise. And it's just at a point where not only Los Angeles, but the United States is really at a true crisis with its incarceration and its mental health population.
Thank you for that. And our next question will come from Liz Melendez. You're unmuted. And then the next question after Liz will be Diane Mendez. So go ahead, Liz.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, everyone on this panel. It's been very educational and enlightening. My name is Liz Melendez. I work as a social worker investigator for the Los Angeles Dependency Lawyers. We are likely the largest nonprofit in the country. We represent parents that have open dependency cases at dependency court. So my question is geared more towards the incarcerated parents that still have parental rights, and depending on the situation regarding their criminal case, have the possibility to be able to get released and be able to reunify with their children. The question is geared towards the services that are made available for those incarcerated parents in terms of how can they connect internally. I know that myself, we make great efforts to reach litigation coordinators and different staff, but what can we tell our clients, our parents to do when they are incarcerated? Who is the point person that they can connect with to be able to access those services? And I would be referring to things like parenting classes, maybe individual counseling, any type of substance abuse education or support services, NAMI, mental health services. Thank you.
Yeah, I can field that question. So at least from the standpoint of if you're a woman that's incarcerated in LA County jails, is that we encourage anyone that's incarcerated to put an inmate request form in and list the services that they need. those forms are then sent to the correct provider that provides those services. So for example, if you're interested in parenting classes or visitation, those forms would be sent to gender responsive services, and we would be able to connect you with whatever services is the best fit. If someone's looking for certain types of legal services, that might be sent somewhere else, or mental health services. And so that would be the first step, is just encouraging any of the clients that you have to put in an inmate request form so that they can directly engage with services. Another, potential route too is just working on the outside as organizations. We've been working through a grant with various county entities to try and really understand the system. And I can tell you that the DCFS currently doesn't even have a very good count about how many people that are incarcerated and actually has cases. And so the system is complex, and we're trying to improve the linkages to make sure that we can take both approaches. Both the incarcerated population can be empowered to be able to find the services and be connected, but also vice versa, where we as county entities and different types of community providers can really go in and search out and try and find individuals that need our care, and that we can connect ourselves. Because sometimes people are not aware of services, or they're just not there mentally where they need to be, to where they might actually engage. And so we want to make sure that people understand on both sides of the house, like what services are available, and that they connect with the resources they need.
Thank you very much for that answer. Next question will come from Diane Mendez. A request has been sent for you to unmute, Diane, so if you can acknowledge that. And then we will try after Diane to go to Felipe Burgos again. So we'll try you next, Felipe. But Diane, on your device, there should be an acknowledgement for you to unmute. Okay, please go ahead, Diane.
Can you hear me?
We do hear you now.
Okay.
Yep, please.
Thank you all for having this conversation. It is so important. I have been involved in the jail system through my son, who's been involved for about 8 to 9 years. And so I have two questions. One is the number that Tim Belovich showed on the types of contacts and the numbers of visits between 1122 and 423. Whether or not these numbers are inflated numbers, meaning that they consist of individuals who could very well be counted multiple times versus an individual count, such as clinical follow-ups, showing 36,000, but an individual could have multiple follow-ups. And so therefore the total number of 71,539 is actually an inflated number. And so that's question one. Question two is, during my son's incarceration, he did have an incident where he had a delusional thought and ran and had a severe injury, which resulted in going to the hospital and being unconscious and having some severe injuries. And I wonder, what is the policy on, being informed as a loved one? What is the policy of being contacted and being informed? I became knowledgeable by way of his lawyer happening to visit and finding this out. So that's question number two.
Yeah, Ms. Mendez, I can take the first question for sure. With regard to the data I was sharing, those could be, an individual could receive multiple appointments and they would be included there. So it's not inflating the numbers, but if an individual was seen every week for 4 weeks, they would have 4 clinical follow-ups because that's what we are requiring. So that means that I'm not trying to represent that we saw 71,000 different individuals in a 6-month period. I'm saying that we did 71,000 clinical types of contacts with the population we had at the time. So many people received multiple contacts. They could receive individual contacts and group contacts and crisis contacts. So those are not to convey that those are individuals, 71,000 different individuals. With regard to the informing of family, when an individual is at the hospital, they're actually out of our care. They're in the care of the hospital, and the hospital makes a determination about the need to contact family members and whether an injury is serious enough that they feel the need to reach out to a family member. So again, when we transfer someone to a medical center, be it one of our county medical centers or be it a private hospital, community hospital, those individuals then become patients of those facilities, and those facilities take over the care and make determinations about whether or not family should be contacted regarding something that's occurred.
Great, thank you for that, Dr. Bell.
Hello, thank you very much for organizing this panel. It's been very
sorry, this is Felipe. Please go ahead, Felipe, we hear you.
Sorry. Thank you very much for organizing this panel and presenting these statistics. It's been very interesting. I've had the opportunity to be a volunteer for the for the Sheriff's Department, providing technical support in the mental health assistance. And I wanted to ask about whether there are continued plans for expanding specifically the peer accompaniment program that Carrie Morrison was presenting that's been so successful. There was a very impressive report that was presented to the LA Board of Supervisors revealing a 600% decrease in the levels of self-harm in the mental health assistant units. And I know that there is currently an attempt to expand it at the women's jail, and that there the levels of unmet mental health need are the highest. That's not just specific to LASD, it's specific to the entire country. Women inmates have much higher levels of serious mental illness. So I wanted to know whether that program is going to be expanded, because it was expanded remarkably fast under COVID to the entire 4th floor of Twin Towers 1. And there was talk of expanding it to the 2,000 to 3,000 other HOH units throughout Twin Towers initially.
Thanks for your question. Yes, we have plans to expand those units. Like I said earlier, I mentioned earlier in our panel, it's our goal that just becomes our level of care. That unit is not a special unit in any way, but that's the care that you receive when you are in that level of housing, or what we refer to as HOH housing. And absolutely, we value and really support the use of our mental health assistants on those units. But we also don't limit the ability to roll out those units or to implement those units if we don't have eligible mental health assistants ready to go. Mental health assistants are an important part of those units and play an important role, but we also won't limit the ability to have those units if we don't have mental health assistants, because sometimes it takes time to train them and identify those individuals, which is, and not, we don't always have a pool of eligibility that fits the criteria for those mental health assistants. So yeah, we do have obviously plans on rolling out more of those housing units and pods and utilizing the skills of the mental health assistants as much as we can.
Great, thank you very much for that answer. And that does conclude all of the community questions at this time. So Commissioner Garcia, I will turn it back to you now.
Thank you to each of our panelists for providing your insights and sharing your thoughts, and to the community members for tuning into this important conversation hosted by the Civilian Oversight Commission. I view every one of us as leaders in reimagining and building toward a holistic vision of safety and well-being for the most vulnerable. So again, thank you for all your participation today. We hope you can join us at the upcoming commission meeting at Dollarhide Community Center in Compton, set for Thursday, June 15th, and the next community meeting at Florence Library in South Los Angeles on Saturday, June 24th. Please visit coc.lacounty.gov for more information and to RSVP. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. This concludes our conference.